What is going on, kid family? Welcome back to the channel. So for those of you that missed part 1, we were spray painting this front lip off a BMW with our purple Harbor Freight gun. This is the cheapest gun you can get for spray painting anything, and we were using the Rustoleum paint, enamel paint, for this paint job. Now, if you guys are not familiar, on part 1, once we started spray painting this, the primer and the paint just didn't really adhere. We had a bunch of runs over here in the paint and a bunch of dots. So off camera, once I let it dry a little bit more, we went ahead and did about 2 or 3 more light coats. We adjusted the gun a little bit more. We restricted a lot of the fluid from coming out, and the paint laid down a little bit thinner, a little bit nicer, and that orange peel that we had pretty much evened out right over here for the most part. But the finish isn't as good as I would like it. We still have dots for the most part on the lip. The coverage was pretty good. Obviously the bad areas, you could still see some spider webs under the paint, but we will fix that. So on this video, guys, we are going to be sanding the lip back down so the paint adheres to itself this time. We're gonna adjust the gun a little bit better, and we're gonna spray the Rustoleum paint, and hopefully it comes out a little bit better and a little bit nicer. So if you are interested in seeing any valuable information, I go with the tips and tricks that I have learned over the few months that I have been doing this. Again, Harbor Freight spray gun, Rustoleum paint job, front lip. Keep watching. Alright, so we are using the 500 grit sandpaper. Again, this is already like the base coat, single stage paint, meaning that the clear and the gloss and the color is all in one. So we are wet sanding this on a little block, and we're just gonna get it nice roughened up. We're gonna try to get rid of some of the gloss, so later when we paint, the paint sticks on the surface much better. And hopefully at the same time, while we're sanding, we're gonna get rid of a lot of the dust and contamination that's on there, and those little pinholes, we'll see what happens with those. Alright, so this is the current status. As you guys can see, it goes from shiny to nice and flat with the 500. As you can see, I am going through the paint in some areas, so when I go and see white, I stop and pull back. There still is a little bit of pinholes here and there, but we definitely did reduce the size of them greatly. So we'll still go over this upper edge right here to get some more of those pinholes out. And again, I'm hoping that the Rustoleum paint can cover up those little pinholes, and we'll do like 2 light coats in the beginning just so we can get the little coverage and adhesion we want. But for now, we have to keep sanding the whole lip. Alright guys, after a few hours of sanding, we got the top layer of paint off nice and smooth. Obviously in some areas, as you'll see, we went through to the primer, which is fine though because the edges are nice and smooth. So we are good to go. We are just gonna clean this off extra clean today. Soapy water, we're gonna wash it all down, and let it air dry. So tomorrow we're gonna paint this thing. Tomorrow should be about 75 degrees, which is perfect, and we'll get her painted. I was able to knock down a lot of the little pinholes that were everywhere. I was able to knock down a lot of the pinholes. Everything looks nice and smooth for the most part. All the glossy surfaces are for the most part sanded down, so the paint, the fresh paint, adheses nicely onto this surface. Again, we are using 500 grit, and I think we're gonna stick with that. Good morning, guys, and welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we are gonna be finishing the front lip off that BMW 335 Xi. If you guys are not familiar with part one, we started doing the Rustoleum paint job on it, and after like the second coat of the color, everything started to run. There was these pinholes everywhere, so I'm not exactly sure what went wrong, whether I went too thick on the paint, whether it wasn't adhesing properly to the primer. But regardless, obviously you guys know we sanded that back down after about a week. We let it fully dry because it takes forever to dry with the Rustoleum paint job if you're not using hardener in the whole process. So today we got a little newer setup. We changed some things around, so let me show you through the garage. So first things first, we got the compressor out here, and I know last video I didn't go into much detail about everything that I was doing, but we're gonna keep the compressor out here so it's getting nice fresh air. We already drained the compressor about 3 times, so as you know, the compressor accumulate water in the tank, and you don't want that water to getting picked up, going through the line, going through the gun on the paint job. So there's a nipple right here. We drained it about 3 times to help remove any amounts of water that were there. Now usually these fans are right here. I'm swapping them out to be right over here. And again, this material right here is gonna be catching most of that overspray, and whatever it doesn't catch, it's just gonna lay down right here on the cardboard. Last time when we were spraying the yellow bumper, we just were running open fans, and I'm telling you, there was spots all over the house, all over the vehicles that were even parked way back there. So this is to help the neighborhood and to limit the amount of overspray. Now the floor is wet, the floor is clean. We always clean the garage, make sure we blow dry it out with a leaf blower. And then obviously we got a lot of cardboard set up in the garage to help protect with overspray. And you know, we're gonna be doing our test patterns right over here. So very important for this video, I'm gonna make sure my fan pattern is perfect. My fluid delivery on the gun is perfect. So fluid delivery adjustments are right over here. Fan pattern adjustments are right over here. And we got the air pressure adjustment, the aftermarket one with the gauge, right over here. And as always, we got a filter to catch any excessive water that might be still in the system. I've actually been having pretty good luck with the Harbor Freight filter. So as you guys know, originally when we started painting, we would paint on these buckets, but we would have to stack them up, and they would still be fairly low to the ground, probably about here. Now the last video I used a table that's outside, but I don't want to damage that table with overspray. So right over here we are using something you would iron your clothes with. This is nice because it can adjust a little bit lower or a little bit higher. And the higher we get this next to all this plastic, that means there's less chances of dust coming down onto the final product. So I'm really happy with this setup. It's not too wide, not too skinny, so when I'm spraying, I can make sure I get the bottom side of the lip and move my gun freely into multiple curvatures of this front lip. So at this point, guys, we are gonna go start mixing the paint again. So originally when we were doing the first paint job that we had to sand down, I went with like a 55% paint and 45% mineral spirit solvent mixture. I really like that mixture. I'm gonna try to use that mixture again. And you know, so I'm not sure what would it be. It's not going to be 1-to-1 ratio, because 1-to-1 ratio would be 50-50. So it requires a little bit of fine tuning, but I like it. Let's roll with it. All right, guys, so we got the Rustoleum gloss black enamel. Always you want to make sure you stir this thing up, shake it up, whatever you do, mix it up for a good 4 or 5 minutes. just so we get all the components inside the oils mixed well throughout the paint, so that it doesn't lead to any issues later down the road. So again, we are using odorless mineral spirits. This is what you want to use if you're running anywhere close to a 50-50 or 1-to-1 ratio. You can use acetone as well, but acetone is a very aggressive solvent compared to mineral spirits. I am going to be doing some experiments later between mineral spirits and acetone with the paint and seeing what sprays out better. But for now, I read online, so that's what I'm doing. I'm using mineral spirits, the odorless kind. It does smell a lot less in the garage when I'm painting compared to acetone. Acetone had a very strong smell to it and odor, so I prefer this one actually. Get your mixing cup ready. This one unfortunately has some weird ratios here, not that we are going to be using, so we are just going to be going with the fluid ounces measurement here. And last time I sprayed this bumper, I used about 4 ounces of paint, which was way too much for this front lip. So for this paint job, we're probably gonna go with 3 ounces of paint, and then we're gonna fill the rest of it up to just about 6 ounces of mineral spirits, just shy of 6. Obviously, like I said, we are not going 50-50 ratio with this. We are gonna try to go a little bit thicker on the paint, because the paint is fairly thick and it's gonna try to cover some of the imperfections on the bumper. And again, if you guys are just gonna be painting this as is, it is way too thick to spray out of the gun. Like, look at the runoff time on this. It is still running off. You want your runoff to be around 3 to 4 seconds range once you mix it with mineral spirits, and I'll show you guys that a little bit later on once we got everything mixed up and ready to go. And a little trick I like to use is take some masking tape, and we're gonna put it right here on the surface, just so when we're pouring this paint, it's not going to spill all over the place, and it's just the easier cleanup. So let's go ahead and take this out. 3 ounces of paint. Tiny bit more. Alright, perfect. Okay, not perfect. Well, so much for saving paint, eh? Alright, let's jump back into action here and fill this up with roughly around 5.8 ounces. Oh no, my phone's gonna be black. Very watery mixture. And let's check out the runoff time here in a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna put some mineral spirits in the gun, run the gun a little bit, make sure everything's clean, that all the nozzles right here are not jammed, just so we get a nice spraying pattern and everything is good. Always make sure you close your cap very good. You don't want to be painting and your paint spilling on top of the cap. Let me put my mask on here. So right here, I like to do my initial testing on the spray pattern and everything else. I like to check my PSI first of all. And I'm going to be running about 29 PSI on this. So my pattern is way open right now. And for this lip, we don't need a full open pattern. So I'm going to turn it down. And then the fluid tip delivery, I always did this wrong because I was always opening it all the way and then turning down. So what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna turn it in, meaning close it, and then I'm gonna turn it out a little bit and go from there. So you want to shoot just about 5 to 8 inches away. You want to keep your wrist straight. Move the whole arm. Don't move the wrist joint. This causes overspray in either direction and the particles don't lay down properly. So I'm just going to adjust my air pressure a little bit and see the difference here. And again, with the paint, it's going to be a little different because the paint is a little bit thicker. But I'm just going to clean the tip of the gun one more time. Everything looks good so far though, nothing looks clogged. Alright guys, and as always, make sure you use a paint strainer to strain the paint of any debris, dust that might be in there. And that should be more than enough paint for this lip, especially since the lip is already for the most part painted and just sanded down. It's always interesting to get a gun holder. This is my gun holder. I'm using my Harbor Freight jack stand, which is perfect. If you don't have a holder, I highly recommend being creative or getting one. So I like to put some mineral spirits in this cup just because I don't clean my supplies until at the end of the whole process and I don't want it to dry out. All right lads, we're just about ready to start spraying at this point in time. We're gonna clean this whole thing off. Big shout out to my boy Erwin who hooked it up with some protective gear. We got a hairnet and some goggles. I had some goggles but they were all scratched up, so this clean ones will protect my eyes. All right, nice and tight and sealed. So now that we have the paint in here, let's check the spraying pattern one more time because it is going to differ from the initial spraying because the paint is a lot thicker here. Very little fluid delivery at this point. And the tip, I want it a little bit wider, so let's open her up a little bit more. Let's get some more fluid in her by turning counterclockwise. That looks pretty good. I like that spray pattern. Again, the first coat, we're turning down the fluid tip just because we want to lay a nice coat down so it adheres properly. We don't want to make the same mistake as last time. So that looks nice. Just the right amount of fluid. I like the pattern. It's wide enough for the front lip. And it's not going to run if we just stay in one place a little bit too long. Alright, that looks good to me. This is going to allow me to slowly and controllably paint this lip. If you have too much fluid coming out right away, you won't be able to control it. You'll be moving your arm way too fast. Alright guys, at this point, the floor is wet, the paint gun is ready, the pressure, the spray pattern is ready. I am going to use a wax and grease remover. And this is the wax and grease remover we are using, custom shop series, and I have it in a little small convenience spray bottle. So let's go ahead, wipe everything down. Always use protection. At this point you don't want to be using your bare hands for anything because the oils will contaminate the item you are painting. So make sure you guys get the front, the side, the lips, the edges, and wipe it down properly. Any kind of contamination with grease, oils, the paint won't want to stick as well as it can. All right, there is still some dirt that just came off, so let's flip this over. And the second pass, which is actually my third, I filmed one I didn't film one, but this time we're just gonna wipe one way. No turning back. Alright guys, we got the garage door down right now. Let's turn these fans up all the way. This is perfect. I'm gonna wet the floor one more time. I like to clean my hose off. Sometimes it might have some contamination, dust built up in here. I like to clean that off. Alright guys, so at this point we are ready to spray. We have all our protective equipment. We have a respirator, eyeglasses, we have a hat, and we have a whole suit and gloves. Don't harm yourself with these solvents, with these chemicals, because this is not good for you. So let's put you on the top of my head and let's start painting. Alright gentlemen, this is a tack cloth. It absorbs a lot of the contamination, dust that's on the paint. It reduces static. So this is the last step before you're actually going to paint. Alright guys, everything looks nice and good. Let's start to paint. Let's cross our fingers this time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's cross our fingers. Very light coat, very nice. Just a nice little mist. That's what we want to do. And again, like I told you guys, I restricted the fluid tip just so we get a very, very nice sprinkle on everything first. I'm actually going to do the bottom too here. We are in no hurry. We are going to let this dry for a good 20 minutes. And while we're doing that, we're going to get some breakfast because we have not ate anything this morning yet. So we're going to leave it all like this. So far, so good. We're probably going to do another coat just like that, very light. And then we'll lay down a final, then we'll finally lay down some wet coats. Alright, it's been about 25-30 minutes. Came back from eating some nice chicken wings, barbecue, you know, honey barbecue. This coat went on pretty nice. I do want to give a little bit more fluid for the next coat, so I'm going to turn this counterclockwise a little bit more. Lock it in there. Let's check the spray pattern. Pretty good. A little bit more fluid is good. Here we go. you know, I feel like this area right here is always having some issues. So I turned this light off because this light does give out quite a bit of heat. And I'm curious if that's the problem causing it, if that light is causing this. But I do see some little pinholes here. But we're doing light coat, so hopefully the next coat, it comes out a little bit better. But overall, not too bad. At this point, this is my second time painting this lip. It's just going to be what it is going to be. We'll spray it down. If there's imperfections, that will have to get buffed out. We're not going to be respraying this for a third time because my technique isn't really changing much. So hopefully that light is the problem here. But let's give it another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we'll be back. Alright guys, at this point I got my fluid tip back out some more. I actually lowered the air pressure of the gun for this one. I feel like it was using too much air pressure. I checked my fan pattern right now, check it out. Looks pretty good. So this time we're going to change it up. We're not going to go through the whole lip kit like this. We're actually going to concentrate on both the top, the bottom, the top, the bottom, and try to accumulate a wet coat for this third pass. So let's get you back on my forehead and watch. Let's do it. Third pass, guys. Third pass. This is going to be a little bit thicker one. So right now, we're just dusting off the lip. If there's any debris that's really loose, it'll fly out. Alright, looks pretty good. Pretty wet. Looking good. There's pinholes here again. I don't know why. I don't like that. But it is what it is. Alright, look at that glass finish. I like it. Here it's a little choppy, but it is what it is. I'm not too concerned about the back portion of this, just the front portion. Wow, that's so interesting. I don't have a lot of light here, but I think there's a little bit of a run. But overall, pretty smooth. I'm liking it. Yeah, there's a few pinholes again over here, but once you sand it out, it should be okay. Let's just dry it off a little bit. Wow, it's actually like, look at that, it's running off. What does that tell you? That tells you that it looks like glass because it was so wet. Alright guys, real quick, hopefully this is working. We sprayed down the third coat. The third coat, we went over it about twice every pass, and you know, it came out pretty good. It laid down really wet, too wet for example, but it is running in some spots, like from the bottom corner here, but overall the flat surface looks pretty darn good. And obviously the wetter it is, the smoother it's going to come out. We got some runs over here actually in the corner. Unbelievable, man. But there's always going to be a consequence. The smoother, the more fluid you want it to run out, and the more gloss-like you want it to be, you might run into some runs. Now if you just want a regular finish, it's going to be very orange peely, so there's consequences to everything. Alright guys, let me tell you a little bit about that coat. The coat came out pretty good, nice and thin, acquired a nice base, but we did get some runs in the paint. Most of the paint that ran was around this area right here, because as we're spraying, whatever paint's accumulating on the back end of this lip has nowhere to go and it runs down. So there are runs. I'm hoping you guys can see it right there by the edge. There's some more right here, and these pinholes are still here. While painting the next coat, I am going to turn on this light so I can see a little bit better. I'm not too worried about the runs because, you know, again, the last time we painted, we had some runs, and we followed up with a few more coats, and it evened out the paint job for the most part. I'm going to try to avoid painting excessively right on this portion so we don't get no more runs. But there's a fine line between having a clear paint job and a run. Your mixing ratio plays a big role in this. The thicker the fluid, the less likely it is to run, but you'll have more orange peel. The thinner the fluid, it's going to lay down much better, much smoother, more glass-like, but you may run into runs. No pun intended. So let's go ahead, let's mock up the gun again. We'll do a little fine tuning. We'll decrease the gun we'll decrease the fluid tip a little bit. We might adjust the air pressure, and we'll spray down the fourth coat lightly. We'll probably have to do 2 light coats again and another wet coat later on. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. Alright guys, as you just saw, I sprayed it all down. It's very thin, but I went over the same area a lot of times to accumulate that depth. Came out okay. Alright, we'll let it dry for another good 30-40 minutes, and then we'll have to come back and paint it again. Now there's some more debris going into the paint. This is obviously going to need a wet sand. Like there's like nothing in the gun anymore. Whoa, what the f is that? Where did that big ass run come from? What the f***? Holy f***. What the f*** is going on over here?
I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and see it's true.